So this module is about the difference between when you operate from your authentic self versus operating from your ego. And this is uh, what matters here is when you're operating from your values, that is when you're in your most authentic self. What does authentic self mean? It means you're being yourself, your most natural self. You're trying your best to be like in the highest version of you is another word for it. The highest version of you, the version of you that is aligned with her values. He lives his values. He's living in a way that he's happy with. He likes the way he's showing up. Do you like the way you're showing up? Is the authentic self, right? So how you know if you're not in your authentic self is when you feel a lot of anxiety, a lot of like avoidance, a lot of rigidity, a lot of like just a very uncomfortable. That's mostly coming from the ego. So there's two ways people operate, either from their authentic self or from their ego. And the way you can tell if someone's operating from their ego is when it's just mostly the way they feel. So when I say ego, how it can show up is if you're talking to someone and you notice like, you notice something you don't like about them, and in your mind you start judging them. You're like, let's say someone tells you they love biryani. I don't know. Someone tells you like they love biryani, they just think it's the best thing in the world, and they just like keep talking about it, and in your mind you're judging them. You're like, why the heck is this man always talking about biryani? Like, he needs to stop. He's so annoying. And you're saying that in your mind. The authentic version of you would actually point that out. You would say, let's say he says the third time he talks about biryani, and you're like, hey, buddy, like this is the third time you talk about biryani. Like, and you would kind of point it out. You wouldn't judge him for it. And you'd kind of see like you're not judgy, you're not like icky about it. You're just like, hey, like you're kind of playfully pointing it out. Like this and the third time talking about biryani. One last time and I'm ending this conversation like in a funny way, right? But you're not like, and this is hard to describe sometimes because I'm trying to point out how this shows up, but the when you're showing up in your authentic self, you're very relaxed. You're very like curious, you're very observant, you're listening, you're seeing, you're coming from a place of I just want to see if he's my husband or not, or if this is my spouse or not. When you're coming from your ego, it can show up in so many different ways, but one of the ways is like I want to see if they like me, am I good enough, or are they good enough, or is this worthiness levels are different? Like an ego doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's more about like it's more about you. It's more about like making things about you than it is about like the actual process of finding a spouse. It's more about you're not after the truth. You're more after what serves your ego. So as an example, if something is bothering you, you have options of how that shows up. If the authentic version of you, the way it would point it out is like, hey, like, this kind of bothered me when you said that. Can we talk about it? There's no people pleasing. There's no like, oh my God, what is he gonna think? Oh my God, he's so annoying. Like none of that. You're just very straight up, transparent. You say what's on your mind. You say it directly. You say what needs to be said with respect, and you understand like your you know your only goal is to figure out if he's your husband. But with the ego, the way it would show up is like, oh, he just said this, but let's say if you're an anxious person, I don't want to like rock the boat because then he won't like me anymore if I point it out. And so then he's going to run away. Or if you're avoidant, same thing. Like, I'm not going to say something because I just want to avoid conflict. And if I avoid conflict, I won't have to face any of like the negative stuff about relationships. So let me just stay quiet. That is also ego. That is also about you. You're making it about you. This process is not about you. It's about you and like your highest self going after your goals. So you're trying to see, does this align with my values? Does this align with what I'm looking for? You're not here to serve your own ego. And what happens is when you're operating from your ego, that means you're not aligned with your values. And usually when someone's operating from their ego, there's a lot of shame, and that shame can be disguised as how that looks actually. This is how it plays out. when you're operating from your ego, you see people as better than you or worse than you. There's always like a better or worse than you. So how that shows up is you put either people on a pedestal or you like get the ick very easily. So because you think they're less than you. So there's very like levels of worthiness when it comes to when you're operating from your ego. When you're operating from your best self, you see yourself as a human being. You see other humans as a human being. We're all the same. We just have, we're just trying to see if we're a fit, if we're a match. So let's say if I'm like operating for my best self and I'm looking for someone who's ambitious and I meet up with someone who, let's say, works at McDonald's and they don't really have a plan for their future. Okay. I wouldn't see them as like, ew, like, why would he even talk to me? I would say, like, it's an, thank you, for reaching out to me, but at this time, I don't think we're a match because, XYZ. I treat people as human beings that are equal. And this is so important because when you start seeing people as human beings, you don't put people on pedestals because we all know that like even the best of the best who looks good on the outside, they have flaws and I don't need to put them on a pedestal because they're just a human being. I'm a human being, they're a human being. There's no shame, there's no like we're just all the same. We're just trying to see if we're a match, if there's a fit. It doesn't mean if someone rejects me, that means I'm not good enough. It just means we're not a fit. With the ego, rejection means I'm not good enough. Instead of the authentic self is like rejection means I'm not good enough. Or like, sorry, rejection just means that we're just not a fit. They're just not my spouse because my spouse wouldn't reject me. But do you see the difference? The difference is with the ego, everything's a lot more like me, like it's about me, it's about like what they think of me, like am I good enough or are they good enough for me or like it's just very chaotic. And typically when someone's acting from their ego with the avoidance, it's much easier to get the ick towards someone. And that's a sign that their nervous system is like activated, like, oh, like you, like, like there's something happening. So that in and of itself was a whole thing to discover and learn. But how to not operate from your ego is operating from your values. How do I see myself? The story that I'm telling myself. If I see myself as not good enough or like I'm stuck in my life and this, that, my ego is going to kick in. It's going to operate from that. And the goal here is not to 100% be your authentic self all the time because that's kind of impossible. We slip and fall every now and then, but we're to majority of the time we're operating from the best version of ourselves. And the best version of ourselves sees yourself. You have a very high self-concept. You see yourself in a very positive light, like a human light, right? Like you notice you have flaws, you have vulnerabilities, you're not a perfect human, and I have some good qualities in me and I'm looking for someone who also I can, fit with. But you acknowledge your faults. You acknowledge that, not from a place of shame, but more of like, I'm a human being. This is what's happening with me. And this is also my good stuff too. Like you recognize that in yourself and the story you tell yourself is much healthier and you feel much lighter. Okay, so that's like from your authentic self is the story you tell yourself, which is the module I already made, and then the values and priorities. Are you acting from your values and priorities? Those two matter as well. Okay, so there's that. And with the ego, when you're triggered from your ego, or you're like, oh my God, he didn't text me back. Like, I'm so triggered. Like, why doesn't anyone love me? That is your work to take ownership of and work on. Because if you're operating from your ego, you are going to constantly dump that on the other person. You're going to make people run away. And so, it's so important to recognize the skill of when you're operating from your ego and when to soothe yourself and how to shift back into your highest self. What does that look like? It means actually coming up with exercises and things to do that will make you feel better about yourself. That could be regulating your nervous system, which I have a video about on my channel. And listening to more positive things about you, like figuring out what is this thing that I'm so stuck on about me not feeling worthy, and how can I work on making myself feel more worthy about myself. Whatever it is, right? If you feel disconnected to yourself, how can I feel more connected? Am I like lacking in my prayers? Am I lacking in my faith? And like what my connection to Allah? Like, am I completely forgetting that and so attached to marriage now? All of that is connected to your ego. And you just have to catch on to see which one am I operating from. And I always say, do not go out there if you're operating from your ego. Do not put yourself on the apps and talk to people if you're constantly operating from your ego, because all you're gonna do is just repeat the same mistakes over and over, and you don't even know why. And you're just gonna gather more evidence of how you're not good enough because you're operating from your ego. But when you operate from your best self, you put yourself out there, you fail, you learn, you get back up. Your best self, your best authentic self is it sees failures as opportunities to learn from, not it doesn't make you a failure. The ego makes you as a failure. Everything that doesn't work is like, oh, I'm such a failure, which is not, it's not the growth mindset that's gonna get you to where you need to go. Um, so there's that. Inshallah, that helps with the authentic versus ego self. And to get more like the ego is the very first exercise I talked about, where writing out the story about who you think you are and all that. All those negative thoughts are from the ego. So you want to switch them to something that feels more real, that feels more like natural and factual, that serves you, that feels better. And so, again, I have a bunch of videos on this. And so, inshallah, if you just recognize the difference, that will help you a lot.